My husband Declan left me alone in the emergency room parking lot, engine running, tailpipe spewing exhaust into the February rain. I watched his BMW disappear around the corner, heading to what he called an unmissable client dinner, while I clutched test results that were supposed to change everything. But then I heard two nurses by the staff entrance, their hushed conversation carrying words that made my blood run cold. What they revealed about my medical file, about Declan's involvement, about the money, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my illness, and the man I trusted with my life.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Tell us a duh.
The automatic doors of Providence General Hospital slid shut behind me with a pneumatic hiss that felt like finality. My hands trembled as I held the manila envelope Dr. Reese had pressed into my palms 30 minutes earlier, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. Sympathy? Pity? Or was it something else entirely? Something that made her pause before speaking, choosing her words with the careful precision of someone navigating a minefield. "Vivian," she had said, her voice softer than usual, "I need you to review these results carefully, and perhaps you should have someone you trust, really trust, look at them with you." The emphasis on really trust had seemed strange at the time. Now, standing in the drizzling rain of the emergency department parking lot, watching Declan's taillights disappear into the Seattle evening traffic, those words echoed with new significance. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. A text from Declan, sent while he was supposedly driving to his crucial meeting. "Sorry, babe, Carmichael Corp won't reschedule. You understand. It's just routine follow-up anyway, right? Call an Uber. Love you." Just routine follow-up. The words stung like alcohol on an open wound. 6 months of mysterious symptoms, the fatigue that left me unable to climb our townhouse stairs, the unexplained weight loss, the night sweats that soaked through our expensive sheets, all dismissed as stress or early menopause at 33. And now, finally, Dr. Reese had ordered the comprehensive panel that revealed what exactly? The envelope remained sealed in my shaking hands. The rain intensified, cold droplets mixing with the hot tears I hadn't realized were falling. I moved toward the covered pickup area, my legs unsteady, my vision blurring. That's when I heard them. Two nurses stood just outside the staff entrance, partially hidden by a concrete pillar, sharing a cigarette despite the hospital's no-smoking policy. Their scrubs identified them as working in medical records, the same department that had processed my endless tests over the past half year. "Did you see the Ashford case file?" The first nurse, a woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun, took a long drag. "The one Dr. Reese flagged this afternoon?" My maiden name was Ashford. I froze, pressing myself against the cold brick wall hidden in the shadow of the parking structure. "The insurance fraud one?" The second nurse, younger with bright red lipstick, lowered her voice. "Where the husband's been requesting specific tests that aren't medically necessary?" Bingo. Turns out he's been racking up procedures for 6 months. MRIs, biopsies, experimental screenings, all billed to her premium insurance policy from her tech job. The wife probably doesn't even know half of them happened. My breath caught in my throat. Premium insurance from my tech job? I was a senior software architect at Nexus Innovations, one of Seattle's fastest-growing startups. My health coverage was platinum level, covering experimental treatments that standard policies wouldn't touch. Declan had always praised how lucky we were that I had such excellent benefits. "But she's actually sick, right?" Red Lipstick asked, exhaling smoke into the rain. "I mean, she looks terrible. I saw her in the waiting room." Silver Hair shook her head slowly. "That's the thing. Dr. Reese ran a complete metabolic panel, toxicology screen, everything. The woman's blood work shows chronic exposure to something, probably pharmaceutical grade based on the markers. Someone's been making her sick." The envelope slipped from my fingers, landing in a puddle with a soft splash that neither nurse heard over the rain. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the wall for support as the implications crashed over me like a wave. "Jesus," Red Lipstick whispered. "You mean like Munchausen by proxy, but with a spouse?" Medical billing fraud mixed with intentional poisoning, more like. The husband, what's his name? Declan Thorne? He's a pharmaceutical sales rep, has access to all sorts of medications. And get this, he's been the one scheduling all her appointments, always insisting on the most expensive diagnostic procedures. Every test, every scan, every biopsy, he's there, clipboard in hand, making sure it gets billed to her insurance. Declan, my husband of 7 years, the man who held my hair when I vomited, who drove me to every appointment, who researched my symptoms obsessively, printing out articles about rare diseases and experimental treatments, who convinced me that aggressive testing was the only way to find answers, who had access to medications as part of his job with Zenith Pharmaceuticals, who managed all our finances, including my insurance claims, who always insisted I was too sick to review the medical bills myself. They're bringing in the fraud investigators tomorrow, Silverhair continued, crushing her cigarette under her shoe, and probably the police. If Dr. Reese's suspicions are right, we're looking at attempted murder for the insurance payout, plus systematic healthcare fraud. That guy's been treating his wife like a personal ATM, billing her insurance for everything he can think of, while slowly poisoning her to justify the tests. How much are we talking? Red Lipstick's voice carried a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. North of 300,000 in the last 6 months alone. And the wife's company has a life insurance policy, standard executive benefit, $2 million if she dies while employed. That's probably the end game. The numbers swam in my head. 300,000 in medical bills I'd never seen itemized. 2 million life insurance I'd forgotten existed, signed as part of my employment package 3 years ago when I made senior architect. Declan had been so proud, taking me to that expensive dinner at Canlis to celebrate my promotion. Had he been celebrating something else entirely? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Declan. Hope the results are nothing serious. BT Way, can you forward me your insurance card info? They're asking for it at the pharmacy for my prescription refill. My prescription refill? Another lie in what I now realized was an intricate web of deception. The nurses moved back inside, their break over, leaving me alone in the rain with the truth scattered at my feet like the contents of that dropped envelope. I bent slowly, retrieving the soggy papers, my hands steadier now despite the storm raging inside me. Dr. Reese's report confirmed everything the nurses had said. Toxicology positive for multiple pharmaceuticals, symptoms consistent with chronic poisoning, recommendation for immediate psychiatric evaluation, not of me, but of my spouse, a referral to law enforcement attached. And at the bottom, in Dr. Reese's careful handwriting, patient appears to have no knowledge of her husband's actions. Recommend secure communication only. Do not inform spouse of findings. Declan had left me stranded at the hospital, thinking he was abandoning a dying wife who'd soon make him a wealthy widower. Instead, he'd left me with the truth, with evidence, and with a rage that burned hotter than any poison he'd fed me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized but never thought I'd need to use. My sister Celeste, a federal prosecutor in Portland, answered on the second ring. Viv, what's wrong? You sound… Celeste, I interrupted, my voice surprisingly steady. I need a lawyer, a criminal defense attorney, and I need you to drive up to Seattle tonight. Don't call Declan, don't tell anyone you're coming. I'll explain everything when you get here, but right now I need you to listen very carefully. The rain continued to fall as I began to tell her about the envelope, the nurses, and the husband who'd been slowly killing me for profit. My voice didn't waver, my hands didn't shake. The fear and confusion that had plagued me for 6 months had crystallized into something else entirely. Declan Thorne had made a critical mistake. He'd left me alive long enough to discover the truth. And now, everything was about to change. 7 years earlier, none of this would have seemed possible. Declan Thorne and I met at a medical technology conference in San Francisco, where my startup was showcasing our new patient data encryption software. He'd approached our booth with that trademark smile, confident but not arrogant, curious in a way that felt genuine. His silver blue eyes had locked onto mine as I explained the architecture of our security protocols, And unlike most pharmaceutical reps who glazed over at technical details, he'd asked intelligent questions that showed he actually understood the implications. "So you're basically building Fort Knox for medical records," he'd said, leaning against our display table. "That's incredible. I spend half my time dealing with HIPAA compliance nightmares. Someone like you could change the entire industry."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Someone like you. Not something, but someone. He'd seen me as a person first, not just a tech geek in a conference hall. In a male-dominated field where I constantly fought to be taken seriously, that recognition had meant everything. Our first date was at a small Thai restaurant in Capitol Hill, tucked away where tourists never ventured. Declan had researched my LinkedIn profile, not in a creepy way, but in a way that showed he cared enough to learn about me. He knew I'd grown up in Portland, that my sister Celeste was in law school, that I'd taught myself coding at age 12 using library books because my family couldn't afford a computer. "You built yourself from nothing," he'd said over pad thai, his hand reaching across the table to touch mine. "That's the kind of strength I admire. My parents handed me everything: private schools, college fund, connections in the industry. But you earned every single thing you have." I'd fallen for him that night. Fallen for the way he listened when I talked about my dreams of making Nexus Innovations a major player in health tech. Fallen for how he didn't flinch when I ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, using my own credit card. Fallen for the respect in his eyes when I explained my 5-year career plan. We married 18 months later in a small ceremony at the Seattle Japanese Garden. My parents had passed away in a car accident when I was in college, so Celeste walked me down the aisle, while Declan's entire extended family filled the groom's side: his parents, 3 siblings, countless cousins, and childhood friends. The Thorns were old Seattle money, the kind of family with their name on hospital wings and museum galleries. They'd welcomed me warmly, though I'd always sensed a subtle distance, a quiet assessment of whether this self-made tech girl was good enough for their golden boy. Declan's career with Zenith Pharmaceuticals flourished. He specialized in neurological medications, traveling to hospitals throughout the Pacific Northwest to educate doctors on new treatments for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and epilepsy. His income was solid, 6 figures with bonuses, but my salary at Nexus quickly surpassed his as I climbed from senior architect to lead architect to director of security engineering. "I'm so proud of you," he'd say each time I got promoted, opening champagne and cooking elaborate dinners in our townhouse kitchen. "You're going to change the world, Viv. I'm just along for the ride." He'd never shown resentment about my higher salary. Instead, he'd taken over managing our finances, insisting it was the least he could do since I worked such long hours. "You focus on building the future," he'd said, setting up automatic bill payments and investment accounts. "I'll handle the boring money stuff. That's what partners do." Our life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Friday nights meant trying new restaurants in South Lake Union. Saturdays, we'd hike the Cascades if weather permitted, or browse Pike Place Market. Sundays were for meal prep and catching up on industry news, me reading tech journals, him reviewing pharmaceutical studies. We'd talked about children eventually. After my next promotion to VP of Engineering, we'd even looked at houses in Bellevue with good school districts. The perfect Seattle power couple, the pharmaceutical rep and the tech director. His parents finally warming to me after I landed the VP track. His colleagues' wives including me in their book club. My team at Nexus joking about how I'd married up into Seattle society. And then, 8 months ago, the symptoms started. It began with exhaustion that coffee couldn't touch. Then came the nausea that made food repulsive. Weight dropped off my frame, despite Declan's efforts to cook my favorite meals. Night sweats soaked through our sheets, forcing us to keep spare sets ready. Brain fog made coding difficult, forcing me to take medical leave from the VP position I'd been grooming for. Declan had been there through everything, researching symptoms at midnight, scheduling appointments with specialists, holding my hand through every test, every scan, every invasive procedure. When I was too weak to drive, he took time off work. When I couldn't review the insurance paperwork, he handled it all. "We're in this together," he'd whispered during my lowest moments. "For better or worse, remember? You're going to beat this, whatever it is, and I'll be right here beside you." I'd believed him completely, trusted him with my health, my finances, my life. He was my husband, my partner, my anchor in the storm of mysterious illness. Standing in that hospital parking lot with rain soaking through my coat, I realized the truth with crystal clarity. Declan hadn't been my anchor. He'd been the storm itself, systematically destroying me while wearing the mask of devoted husband. And I'd handed him every tool he needed to do it. Celeste arrived at Providence General within 3 hours, her silver Audi pulling into the parking garage where I'd been waiting in the hospital cafeteria. My sister burst through the doors like a force of nature, all sharp angles and sharper mind, her prosecutorial instincts already in high gear. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a fierce embrace. "Tell me everything," she said, guiding me to a corner booth away from other visitors. "Start from the beginning." I laid out Dr. Reese's findings, the nurse's conversation, the pattern of unnecessary procedures. Celeste's expression shifted from concern to fury as she reviewed the medical documents with her legal eye, making notes on her phone. "This is elaborate," she said finally. "Systematic fraud combined with attempted murder. We're talking federal charges, Viv. Wire fraud, healthcare fraud, attempted homicide. He could be looking at 30 years minimum." "I need to know why," I whispered. "Was it always about the money? Was any of it real?" Celeste's hand covered mine. "That doesn't matter right now. What matters is building a case so airtight he can't slip through, and keeping you safe until we can get him arrested." But it did matter, because 7 years ago, when Declan and I were planning our future, everything had seemed so genuine. We'd spent countless nights in our first apartment, a cramped studio in Fremont, sketching out our dreams on the back of takeout menus. My goals were crystal clear: make VP of Engineering by 35, revolutionize healthcare data security, maybe write a book about women in tech, start a family once my career was stable enough that I could take maternity leave without losing momentum. Declan's dreams had seemed equally ambitious. He wanted to move into pharmaceutical management, maybe run his own division at Zenith. "I want to be the guy who brings life-changing medications to patients who need them," he'd said. "Not just a sales rep, but someone who actually makes a difference in healthcare." We'd created vision boards together, mine covered in code snippets and tech conference badges, his filled with medical journals and leadership books. We'd opened a joint savings account for our future children's education, contributing monthly even though parenthood was years away. We discussed names: Rowan for a boy, Sage for a girl, nature names that reflected our love of Pacific Northwest hiking. "5-year plan," Declan would say, pulling me close on our lumpy secondhand couch. "In 5 years, you'll be VP, I'll be regional manager, we'll buy that house in Bellevue with the good schools, start trying for kids, build something real together." The plan had evolved as we grew. When I got promoted to Director of Security Engineering, we'd put a down payment on the townhouse in Capitol Hill. When Declan landed a major account with Swedish Medical Center, we'd upgraded to the BMW he'd always wanted. Every milestone felt like progress toward our shared vision. My promotion to VP track had been the pinnacle. Nexus Innovations was positioning for a major acquisition by one of the tech giants, Amazon or Microsoft, rumors suggested. As VP of Engineering, I'd be part of the leadership team that would negotiate the deal. The potential payout from stock options alone could set us up for life. We'd talked about it over wine on our balcony, watching the Seattle skyline light up at dusk. "You're going to be ridiculously successful," Declan had said, his arm around my shoulders. "And I'll be the lucky guy who gets to say I knew her when. Maybe I'll become a stay-at-home dad, let you be the power player you were meant to be." The idea had appealed to both of us. Declan had often talked about how his own father had been absent during his childhood, always at the office or traveling for business. I want to be there for our kids, he'd said, really there, not just weekends and holidays. We'd even started looking at larger homes with office space where I could work remotely when needed and play areas for future children. Our realtor had shown us a beautiful Craftsman in Queen Anne with a backyard perfect for a swing set. This is the one, Declan had whispered, squeezing my hand as we toured the empty nursery. I can see our whole life here. But now, sitting across from Celeste in the harsh fluorescent light of the hospital cafeteria, those memories felt like scenes from someone else's life. Had Declan ever wanted children, or had he just been playing a role? Had the house hunting been genuine, or was he calculating how much my life insurance would buy him once I was gone? The VP position, I said suddenly, a new horror dawning. My promotion came with that executive life insurance policy, $2 million. Celeste's eyes narrowed. When exactly did your symptoms start? 8 months ago, right after I accepted the VP track position. My sister's jaw tightened. That's not a coincidence. He waited until you were worth more dead than alive. The words hung between us like a death sentence. Mine, that Declan had been engineering. All our shared dreams, our careful planning, our vision of the future, it had all been a facade. While I'd been building toward our life together, he'd been constructing my elaborate death. There's something else, Celeste said, pulling up something on her phone. I did a quick search on the drive up. Declan's parents are facing some serious financial trouble. The Thorne family business, that commercial real estate empire, it's hemorrhaging money. They're over-leveraged on properties that lost value during the pandemic. There are whispers of bankruptcy. Understanding crashed over me. Old Seattle money wasn't so old or so secure anymore. The Thornes needed an influx of cash, and their golden boy had married a woman worth $2 million dead. He was never building a future with me, I said, my voice hollow. He was building an exit strategy. Celeste gripped my hand tighter. Then let's make sure he gets a different kind of exit, straight into a federal prison cell. Dr. Reese agreed to meet us in her office after hours. The hospital had emptied to its night shift skeleton crew, and we moved through dimly lit corridors like conspirators, which, I supposed, we were. Mrs. Thorne, Dr. Reese began, then corrected herself. Vivian, I'm glad you brought your sister. What I need to tell you requires legal counsel. She spread my medical file across her desk, a stack of documents 3 inches thick. 8 months of tests, scans, procedures, each one meticulously documented and billed. I became suspicious 3 months ago, Dr. Reese explained, her finger tracing through the timeline. Your symptoms were consistent with several conditions, but nothing quite fit. Then your husband requested a PET scan, expensive, invasive, and not indicated for your presentation. When I questioned the necessity, he became insistent, said he'd done his research and knew it was essential. That's when you started investigating, Celeste said, her prosecutor's mind already connecting dots. I reviewed every procedure he'd requested. MRIs when X-rays would suffice, biopsies when observation was appropriate, experimental blood panels that cost thousands per test, each one pushing the boundaries of medical necessity, but clever enough to have plausible justification. Your husband knows the system. He understands exactly how far he can push before insurance companies flag it as suspicious. I stared at the documents, each one bearing Declan's signature as my medical proxy. He'd convinced me to sign that authorization 6 months ago, after a particularly bad episode left me too weak to make it to an appointment. You're too sick to deal with medical bureaucracy, he'd said, his voice gentle as he'd held the pen steady in my trembling hand. Let me handle the paperwork. You focus on getting better. I'd signed without reading the fine print. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my caretaker, my advocate in a medical system that felt overwhelming and hostile. The toxicology report, Dr. Reese continued, pulling up a highlighted document, showed traces of 4 different medications in your system: benzodiazepines, antihistamines, and 2 proprietary compounds used in neurological research. The combination creates symptoms that mimic autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue syndrome, even early-stage multiple sclerosis. All conditions that would justify extensive testing, Celeste said grimly. Exactly. And all medications your husband has legitimate access to through his pharmaceutical position. He could requisition samples, attend medical conferences where new drugs are distributed, even order compounds for educational purposes. The perfect cover for systematic poisoning. My stomach turned, not from the poison this time, but from the calculated cruelty of it all. Declan hadn't just been making me sick, he'd been creating a medical mystery that would justify bleeding my insurance for everything it was worth. How long have I been poisoned? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Dr. Reese's expression softened with sympathy. Based on the half-life of these compounds and your symptom progression, I'd estimate 8 to 9 months. The dosing has been carefully calibrated, enough to make you genuinely ill, but not enough to kill you quickly. This wasn't about murder in the immediate sense. It was about creating a chronic condition that would maximize insurance claims over time. Until the life insurance became more valuable than the medical fraud, Celeste added. Then he'd escalate the dosing and let nature take its course. The calculation of it made my skin crawl. Declan had been treating my body like a business investment, extracting maximum value before cashing out entirely. There's more, Dr. Reese said, pulling out another file. I contacted several specialists your husband claimed you'd seen, doctors at Swedish, Harborview, even the University of Washington Medical Center. None of them have any record of you as a patient. What? I leaned forward, scanning the documents. Your husband has been billing your insurance for consultations that never happened, specialist appointments at facilities you've never visited. He's been forging medical records, creating a paper trail of extensive treatment to justify the costs. In total, I estimate he's defrauded your insurance company for over $350,000 in the past 8 months. Celeste's phone was already out, typing notes furiously. We need to involve the FBI immediately. Healthcare fraud of this magnitude falls under federal jurisdiction, plus attempted murder, forgery, insurance fraud. And he has to be stopped before he escalates, Dr. Reese interrupted. Vivian, your next scheduled appointment is in 3 days. Your husband specifically requested additional testing, a spinal tap this time. Extremely invasive, potentially dangerous, and completely unnecessary medically. But it would bill at over $15,000. I felt cold despite the warmth of the office. He's accelerating. The acquisition rumors at Nexus are public now, Celeste said, checking her phone. I saw the tech blogs on the drive up. Microsoft is likely to finalize the deal within 6 months. Your stock options would vest immediately, worth at least another $1 million on top of the life insurance. The timeline clicked into place with horrible clarity. Declan wasn't just after $2 million from life insurance. He was positioning to claim my entire financial legacy, stock options, retirement accounts, the townhouse equity. But he needed me dead before the acquisition completed, while I was still technically employed and the policies remained active. He's going to kill me soon, I said flatly. Probably make it look like complications from my condition. Another tragic case of a young professional struck down by mysterious illness. Dr. Reese nodded grimly, which is why I've already contacted hospital security and filed a formal report with our fraud investigation team. As of this moment, Declan Thorne is barred from this facility. Any attempt by him to access your medical records or schedule procedures will trigger immediate notification to authorities. But he doesn't know that yet, Celeste said, her legal mind already formulating strategy, which gives us a small window to build our case before he realizes we're onto him. I thought of Declan at his client dinner, probably celebrating what he thought was another successful abandonment of his dying wife, texting me sympathetic messages while calculating how much longer until his investment paid off. He left me at this hospital thinking I'd call an Uber home like an obedient victim, I said, anger finally overtaking shock. He has no idea I know the truth. Then let's keep it that way, Celeste said, her prosecutor's smile sharp as a blade. We'll let him think he's still in control, still running his perfect scheme, right up until the moment we destroy him. Dr. Reese closed my file with a decisive snap. I'll continue documenting everything medically, every fraudulent claim, every unnecessary procedure, every trace of poison in your system. By the time we're done, the evidence will be irrefutable. I stood, feeling steadier than I had in months. Maybe it was knowing the truth, or maybe the poison was already beginning to leave my system. Either way, I wasn't the helpless victim Declan thought he'd created. "Let's go home," I said to Celeste. "I need to see exactly what else my husband has been hiding." Celeste drove me home in silence, both of us processing the magnitude of what we'd uncovered. The townhouse looked exactly as I'd left it that morning. Warm lights glowing through the windows, Declan's carefully tended herb garden on the front steps, the illusion of domestic perfection intact. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Celeste asked, her hand on my arm. "No, I need to do this alone. See what he's left exposed now that he thinks I'm just another defeated wife heading home from bad news." I unlocked the door and stepped into what had been my sanctuary. Now every surface felt contaminated. The kitchen where Declan prepared meals, had he been adding poison to my food there? The bathroom cabinet filled with supplements he'd insisted would help, were those actually making me worse? The home office where he managed our finances, what secrets were hidden in those files? My phone buzzed. "Declan. Just finished with Carmichael. Hope you made it home okay. I'll pick up dinner on the way. Thai sound good?" Thai, our first date restaurant. Even now, he was maintaining the performance, weaving nostalgia into his deception. I texted back. "Too tired to eat. Going to bed early." Poor baby. "I'll be quiet when I get home. Love you." Love you. The words that had once meant everything now felt like a threat. I moved to Declan's home office, the room he'd claimed as his domain for boring financial management. The filing cabinet was locked, but I knew where he hid the key, inside a hollowed-out medical textbook on the shelf, a clever hiding spot he'd shown me years ago with a wink. The files inside told the story of my systematic destruction. Medical bills organized by month, each one showing procedures I barely remembered authorizing. Insurance explanation of benefit statements showing thousands in payouts. And beneath those, a separate folder labeled Investment Portfolio. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents for accounts I'd never seen. A high-yield savings account with $127,000, funded by what appeared to be insurance reimbursements for medical equipment I'd never received. Investment accounts with another $89,000, all opened in my name, but with Declan as the sole manager. Even a line of credit against our townhouse equity, $200,000 borrowed without my knowledge. He'd been embezzling from my insurance while simultaneously leveraging our shared assets. Every fraudulent claim had been filtered into accounts only he could access, building a nest egg funded by my suffering. But the most damning evidence sat in a manila envelope at the back of the drawer. Life insurance documents with my signature, forged, I realized, because I'd never seen these particular forms. The beneficiary listed was Declan, but the policies themselves were unusual. Multiple smaller policies from different carriers, each one just below the threshold that would trigger additional scrutiny. Together, they totaled not $2 million, but $3.5 million. He'd been shopping for the best payout, maximizing the value of my death like a savvy investor researching stocks. Beneath the insurance documents, I found something that made my blood run cold, a handwritten timeline on Zenith Pharmaceuticals' letterhead. Dates marking the progression of my illness, with notes about symptom severity and corresponding test costs. The final entry, dated just 2 days ago, read, "Escalation phase, spinal tap complications, natural progression to system failure. Timeline, 3 to 4 weeks maximum." 3 to 4 weeks. That's how long Declan had planned for me to live. My phone buzzed again. "Leaving the restaurant now. Be home in 20. 20 minutes until my would-be murderer walked through the door, expecting to find his victim weak and compliant, grateful for his care. I photographed every document with my phone, sending them to Celeste in real time. Then I carefully returned everything to its place, locked the cabinet, and replaced the key in its hiding spot. When Declan came home, he would find exactly what he expected. His sick wife, resting in bed, completely unaware that she'd just documented enough evidence to end his freedom forever. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, each step feeling stronger than the last. The poison was leaving my system, but more importantly, the fog of deception had lifted completely. Declan thought he had 3 to 4 weeks to complete his plan. He had no idea his timeline had just been cut to 0. I heard Declan's key in the lock, followed by the familiar sounds of him arriving home. Keys dropping into the ceramic bowl by the door, shoes being kicked off, the rustle of takeout bags, even though I'd said I wasn't hungry. The performance of the devoted husband continued even when he thought I couldn't see it. "Viv?" His voice floated up the stairs, concerned and gentle. "You awake?" I called back, keeping my voice weak. Rough afternoon. His footsteps on the stairs were quick, urgent. He appeared in the bedroom doorway, his expression perfectly arranged into worry. In that moment, I saw him clearly for the first time, not as my husband, but as an actor playing a role. Every micro-expression was calculated, every gesture rehearsed. "What did Dr. Reese say?" He sat on the edge of the bed, his hand reaching for mine. I forced myself not to recoil from his touch. "More tests needed. She wants to do a spinal tap next week." His eyes lit up for just a fraction of a second before concern masked it again. "A spinal tap? That sounds serious." $15,000 serious, according to the billing estimate they gave me. "Don't worry about the cost," he said quickly. "That's what insurance is for. We need answers, whatever it takes." Whatever it takes. The words he'd been using for months, each time pushing for another expensive, unnecessary procedure. I'd thought he was being supportive. Now I understood he was calculating his return on investment. "I'm scared," I whispered, and that part wasn't acting. I was terrified, not of my imaginary illness, but of the man sitting beside me who'd been methodically planning my death. "Hey," he pulled me into an embrace that felt like a predator holding its prey. "We're going to figure this out, I promise. I've been doing research. There's a specialist in Portland who's had success with cases like yours. Experimental treatments, cutting-edge stuff. More procedures, more bills, more poison disguised as medicine." "How much would that cost?" I asked. "Don't think about that. I'll handle it. I've been managing our finances carefully, making sure we have reserves for exactly this kind of situation. Reserves built from defrauding my insurance and forging my signature on loan documents." My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Celeste. "FBI wants to meet tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll pick you up at 8:30. I silenced it before Declan could see the screen, but his attention had already sharpened. "Who's texting you this late?" His tone remained casual, but I heard the edge beneath it. "Celeste, just checking in. She should let you rest instead of bothering you." He took my phone, placing it on his side of the bed. "You need to focus on getting better, not dealing with family drama." Family drama. He'd always been subtle about isolating me from Celeste, suggesting my sister was too intense, too demanding of my time. Now I recognized it as another control tactic. "Declan," I said carefully, "have you noticed my symptoms getting worse lately? Like, significantly worse?" His hand tensed slightly on mine. "What do you mean?" "The night sweats are more intense. The nausea is constant. It feels like whatever this is, it's accelerating." I watched his face, looking for any tell, any crack in the mask. What I saw chilled me. Satisfaction, quickly suppressed. "That's probably why Dr. Reese wants the spinal tap," he said smoothly, "to see if there's something aggressive happening that they've missed. But we caught it in time, I'm sure. These things always feel worse before they get better." These things. As if my poisoning was a natural illness with a natural progression. "I've been thinking," he continued, his voice taking on a careful tone, "maybe you should take a leave of absence from Nexus. The stress of work can't be helping. You could focus entirely on treatment. But the acquisition might not happen for months, years even. Your health is more important than any job, Viv, even a VP position. He wanted me away from work, away from the corporate life insurance that required active employment, away from colleagues who might notice my condition improving once the poison stopped, away from any witnesses to my recovery. "I'll think about it," I said, closing my eyes as if exhausted. "Good girl." He kissed my forehead, and I felt the weight of everything he'd done pressing down on me. "Get some rest. I'll be right downstairs if you need anything." He left, pulling the door partially closed. I waited until I heard him in the kitchen before opening my eyes again. My phone showed another text from Celeste. "Stay strong. Tomorrow, we start fighting back." Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The next morning, I waited until Declan left for his usual sales calls before allowing myself to fully exhale. Through the bedroom window, I watched his BMW pull away, then immediately called Celeste. "He's gone. Come get me." She arrived within 20 minutes, her face set with determination. "The FBI wants everything: documents, timeline, witness statements. Dr. Reese is meeting us there. She's bringing your complete medical file and the toxicology reports."
The federal building downtown was imposing gray concrete and tinted windows. Special Agent Victoria Chen met us in a conference room on the 4th floor, her expression serious as she reviewed the evidence Celeste and I had compiled overnight. "Mrs. Thorne," Agent Chen began, spreading documents across the table, "what your husband has done constitutes multiple federal offenses: healthcare fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and based on Dr. Reese's findings, attempted murder. We're talking minimum 25 years in federal prison." "How long before you can arrest him?" I asked. "We need to build an airtight case. Your husband is sophisticated. He's covered his tracks well. The fraudulent billing is spread across multiple insurance carriers. The forged documents are expertly done. Even the poisoning has been calibrated to appear like natural illness progression." Dr. Reese leaned forward. "Which is why we need Vivian to continue the charade. If Declan suspects we're investigating, he could destroy evidence or flee. Worse, he could escalate his timeline and attempt to finish what he started." The thought of returning home, of sleeping next to a man who'd been slowly killing me, made my stomach turn. But Agent Chen was right. We needed him to feel secure, confident his plan was working. "How long?" I repeated. 1 week, maybe 2. We're securing warrants for his financial records, his work computer, his pharmaceutical access logs. We're interviewing the specialists he claimed you saw. We're building a case that's absolutely bulletproof." 2 weeks, I said hollowly. "He thinks I have 3 to 4 weeks left. What if he decides to accelerate?" "We'll have surveillance on the house," Agent Chen assured me. "Undercover officers nearby at all times. The moment we sense any immediate danger, we move in. But ideally, we catch him in the act of another fraudulent claim. Get him on video submitting false paperwork or attempting to administer more poison." Celeste's hand gripped mine. "You don't have to do this, Viv. We can arrest him now on what we have." "And risk him getting a reduced sentence? Risk him claiming it was all a misunderstanding?" I shook my head. "No. I want him buried under so much evidence, there's no chance of escape. I want every single thing he's done documented and proven." Agent Chen nodded approvingly. "Then here's what we need you to do. Continue acting sick, maybe even claim you're getting worse. This will make him confident, possibly careless. Keep taking photos of any documents you find, record conversations if possible, though Washington is a 2-party consent state, so we can't use them in court. Most importantly, document everything he gives you: food, drinks, medications. We'll have the FBI lab analyze it all." "There's something else," Dr. Reese interjected. "The spinal tap he wants you to have. That procedure carries real risks: infection, bleeding, nerve damage. I've documented that it's medically unnecessary, but he'll push for it because of the billing amount." "So I refuse it," I said. "He won't accept that easily," Celeste warned. "He'll use your fear, your desperation for answers. He's been grooming you for months to accept his medical guidance without question."
She was right. Every time I'd hesitated about a procedure, Declan had deployed the same tactics: research articles that supported his position, emotional appeals about leaving no stone unturned, gentle reminders that he was only trying to help me get better. Then I'll make it look like I'm considering it, I said. String him along while you build your case. Let him think he's still in control. Agent Chen stood, extending her hand. You're incredibly brave, Mrs. Thorne. Most people would want immediate protection, would want to run. But what you're doing, helping us build a case that could take down not just your husband, but potentially expose a larger fraud network, that takes real courage. I didn't feel brave. I felt hollowed out, excavated by betrayal. But I also felt something else, burning in my chest, a fierce determination to make Declan face consequences for every lie, every poisoned meal, every forged signature. When this is over, I said, my voice steady, I want him to know that I was the one who destroyed him, that the wife he thought was too sick and too trusting to fight back was the architect of his downfall. Agent Chen smiled grimly. We'll make sure he knows. Now, let's discuss the surveillance protocols. Starting tonight, you'll never actually be alone with him, even if it looks that way. We'll be watching, recording, protecting you while you help us catch a predator. As we reviewed the operational details, I felt the fog of victimhood finally lifting. Declan had spent 8 months making me feel weak, dependent, grateful for his care. It was time to show him exactly how strong I could be. The surveillance began that evening. Agent Chen had assured me the FBI team would be invisible, a van down the block disguised as a cable repair vehicle, body cameras on undercover officers posing as joggers and dog walkers. Knowing they were there should have made me feel safer. Instead, every moment felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Declan arrived home at his usual time, carrying a pharmacy bag along with groceries. Got your prescription refilled, he said cheerfully, setting the white paper bag on the kitchen counter. Dr. Morrison called it in, said it should help with the nausea. Dr. Morrison, my actual gastroenterologist, who I hadn't seen in 2 months. Another lie, another forged prescription. I watched as Declan opened the bag, extracting an amber bottle with my name printed on the label. The pills inside were small, blue, innocuous looking. One with dinner, he instructed, shaking a tablet into his palm and offering it to me with a glass of water. My throat constricted. This was it, the moment Agent Chen had warned me about. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to throw the poison back in his face. But the wire taped between my shoulder blades reminded me of my purpose. The FBI needed documentation. They needed to catch him actively administering the substances that were killing me. Actually, I said, my voice weak, I threw up earlier. Maybe I should wait until my stomach settles. Declan's expression flickered, frustration masked quickly by concern. The medication works best on a schedule, Viv. Consistency is important. I know, but you trust Dr. Morrison, don't you? His voice carried an edge now, the gentleness fraying. He's been treating you for months. He knows what's best. This was the manipulation I'd fallen for repeatedly, the appeal to medical authority, the suggestion that questioning treatment meant questioning my own desire to get better. How many times had I swallowed pills or endured procedures simply because Declan insisted it was necessary? Of course I trust him, I said carefully. It's just the spinal tap Dr. Reese mentioned. I've been reading about complications, paralysis, infections, chronic pain. Maybe we should wait on that. Declan's jaw tightened. He set the pill down on the counter with deliberate control. You've been reading medical forums again. I told you to stop doing that. You're not a doctor, Vivian. You're a software engineer. All you're doing is scaring yourself with worst-case scenarios. $15,000 is a lot of money for a test that might not even give us answers. That's what I'm here for. His voice rose sharply, then immediately softened. I'm sorry. I'm just frustrated watching you suffer. The money doesn't matter. Your health is worth everything we have and more. Everything we have? Including the $416,000 he'd embezzled, The equity he'd borrowed against our home, the life insurance policies I'd never signed. "I'll think about it," I conceded, picking up the blue pill. Under Declan's watchful gaze, I placed it on my tongue, took a sip of water, and pantomimed swallowing. The moment his attention shifted to unpacking groceries, I palmed the pill and slipped it into my pocket. "Good girl," he said, his back to me. "Now, how about I make your favorite, that butternut squash soup you love?" The soup he'd probably been lacing with poison for months. My stomach turned, but I forced a smile. "That sounds perfect." I watched him move through our kitchen with practiced ease, chopping vegetables, measuring spices, stirring the pot with the wooden spoon we'd bought together in Pike Place Market. Every gesture was familiar, domestic, loving. And every moment, he was calculating how much longer until his investment paid off. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Pills secured. Lab analysis in progress. You're doing great. Agent Chen." The FBI had someone in position, watching through windows or cameras, documenting everything. The evidence was building, piece by poisoned piece. Declan ladled soup into bowls, the aroma filling our kitchen. "Here, eat while it's hot." I lifted the spoon, feeling the weight of all his lies in this simple act of sharing a meal. 8 months of poisoned food, of toxic care, of murder disguised as devotion. "To your health," Declan said, raising his own spoon in a mock toast. "To justice," I thought, forcing the soup past my lips while secretly praying the FBI's timeline wouldn't cost me my life. That night, I lay awake beside Declan, listening to his breathing settle into the rhythm of sleep. The soup sat heavy in my stomach. I'd managed to eat only a few spoonfuls before claiming exhaustion and returning upstairs. Each bite had felt like swallowing glass, knowing what might be mixed into the broth. The blue pill from earlier was now sealed in an evidence bag, picked up by an undercover officer posing as a food delivery driver. Agent Chen had texted that preliminary analysis showed a cocktail of sedatives and antihistamines, nothing immediately lethal, but enough to keep me weak, compliant, symptomatic. My phone glowed with another message. "Warrant approved for pharmaceutical records. Will have proof of every medication he's accessed by morning." Progress. Justice moving forward with bureaucratic precision while I played the dying wife in my own bedroom. Declan stirred beside me, his arm sliding across my waist in a gesture that once meant comfort and now felt like a threat. How many nights had we slept like this, his body curved around mine while poison worked through my system? How many mornings had he woken early to prepare breakfast, carefully measuring out the doses that would keep me sick enough to need him? "Can't sleep?" His voice was rough with sleep, but alert underneath. Always alert, always watching. "Just thinking," I whispered. "About what?" "About how I'd trusted you completely, about how you turned my body into a crime scene, about how you calculated the exact timeline of my death while pretending to love me." "About work," I lied. "I should probably tell them I need extended leave. You were right about the stress." His arm tightened around me. "I'm always right about what's best for you, Viv. You know that." The arrogance in his voice, the absolute certainty that he controlled my reality made my skin crawl. But I forced myself to nestle closer, to play the role he expected. "I'm scared," I admitted, and this truth slipped out easier than the lies. What if the spinal tap shows something terrible? What if I'm really dying? "Then we'll deal with it together," Declan said, his lips against my hair. "Whatever happens, I'll take care of everything. The medical bills, the insurance claims, all of it. You just focus on fighting." Fighting? As if I were battling disease instead of him. "Promise me something," I said, my voice breaking with genuine emotion. "If something happens to me, don't talk like that. No, I need to say this. If something happens, promise you'll move on. Find someone else. Be happy. Don't let grief destroy you." The pause before he answered was infinitesimal, but I felt it. The calculation, the adjustment of his response to match expected emotion. "Nothing's going to happen to you," he said finally. "But if it did, I could never replace you, Viv. You're the love of my life, the only one." Lies delivered with such practiced sincerity. How many times had he rehearsed these words, preparing for the moment when he'd play the devastated widower? How many scenarios had he imagined? The funeral where his family would comfort him, the insurance payout he'd collect with appropriately tear-stained checks, the new life he'd built on the foundation of my corpse. "I love you," I whispered, because he expected it, because the wire taped to my skin was recording every word, because someday a jury would hear this conversation and understand the depth of his deception. "I love you too," he replied, already drifting back to sleep. More than anything. I lay there in the darkness, Declan's poisoner's hand resting on my stomach, and felt something inside me crystallize into absolute resolve. He'd tried to reduce me to a victim, to someone too sick and scared to fight back. He'd underestimated the woman he married, the one who'd built her career from nothing, who'd fought her way through a male-dominated industry, who'd learned young that survival meant being smarter than those who wanted to control you. The phone glowed with one final message from Agent Chen. 2 more days. Can you hold on? I typed back with my free hand. I'm not just holding on. I'm gathering ammunition. Because Declan was right about one thing. I wasn't a doctor. I was a software engineer. Someone who understood systems, patterns, data analysis. Someone who knew how to find vulnerabilities and exploit them. He'd built his scheme carefully, but every system had weaknesses. And I was going to find every single one. As dawn approached, I finally slept, not from exhaustion or poison, but from the fierce determination of someone who'd finally stopped being prey and started being predator. 2 more days until the FBI was ready to move. 2 more days to make absolutely certain Declan Thorne would never hurt anyone again. The breakthrough came 48 hours later. Not from the FBI's investigation, but from an unexpected source. I was in the kitchen forcing down dry toast while Declan was upstairs showering when my laptop chimed with an incoming video call. The name on the screen made my breath catch. Iris Kawamoto. Iris had been my closest friend at Nexus before I'd gone on medical leave, a brilliant data scientist who'd helped me build the security architecture that made our company valuable enough for acquisition. We'd drifted apart over the past months. Declan had suggested my illness was too stressful for friends to handle, that I should focus on family only. Another isolation tactic I'd fallen for. I accepted the call, and Iris's face filled the screen, her expression a mixture of concern and barely contained urgency. "Viv, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, but your phone kept going to voicemail." Because Declan had been screening my calls, I realized, sending messages to voicemail, deleting texts from people he deemed stressful. "I'm here," I said quietly, glancing toward the stairs. "What's wrong?" "It's about your medical claims. Remember how I helped HR set up the new insurance portal last year? Well, I was doing routine security testing and noticed some anomalies in the claims database. Vivian, someone's been submitting fraudulent charges under your policy ID." My heart hammered. "What kind of charges?" "Consultations with specialists you've never seen, procedures at facilities across 3 states, even medical equipment rentals for devices that don't exist in any hospital system I can verify. The total is over $400,000 in 8 months. "I know," I whispered. "It's my husband. He's been—" Wait, there's more. Iris's face moved closer to her camera. I cross-referenced the billing codes with pharmaceutical databases. Whoever's doing this has sophisticated knowledge of medical coding and insurance protocols. But they made one mistake. 3 weeks ago, they billed for a specific neurological consultation that requires pre-authorization. The authorization form needs a physician's signature and a patient verification code. So the code they used, it's not from your insurance provider. It's from a pharmaceutical company's internal system, specifically Zenith Pharmaceuticals' sample distribution network. Only their employees would have access to those codes. The water shut off upstairs. Declan would be down in minutes. "Iris, I need you to send me everything you found. Every discrepancy, every fraudulent claim, every piece of evidence." "Already done. Check your personal email, the one from college, not the one you share with Declan. Viv, I also found something else. Purchase orders from Zenith for medications that were supposedly distributed to medical practices. Except the practices don't exist. The addresses are vacant lots or residential homes. Someone's been requisitioning pharmaceutical samples and covering the trail with fake distribution records. Declan's footsteps on the stairs. I have to go, I said quickly. One more thing, the life insurance. I accessed the beneficiary records as part of security testing. You have 3 policies you probably don't know about, all taken out within the last year. Combined value of $3.5 million. Vivian, if something happens to you... I know, thank you, Iris. I'll explain everything soon. I closed the laptop just as Declan entered the kitchen, his hair still damp, a smile on his face. Who was that? He asked casually, but his eyes were sharp. Just a work thing, Iris checking on a security protocol. His expression tightened, almost imperceptibly. You should be resting, not thinking about work. Here, I made you a smoothie, lots of protein, vitamins. You need to keep your strength up. He held out a glass filled with thick purple liquid, berry-flavored, my supposed favorite. How much poison was blended into those innocent-looking berries? Actually, I'm feeling a bit better today, I said, not taking the glass. Maybe the worst is passing. The mask slipped for just a moment. His eyes went cold, calculating. Then the concerned husband returned. That's wonderful, honey, but you know how these things go. Good days and bad days. You should still keep up with your medications, your nutrition. Can't let your guard down now. Can't let my guard down. The irony was almost laughable. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chen. Moving in tomorrow, 10 a.m. Keep your morning clear. Stay safe. Tomorrow. After weeks of playing victim, of swallowing my rage, of documenting every betrayal, tomorrow I would watch Declan's carefully constructed world collapse. You're right, I said, taking the smoothie from his hand. I should keep my guard up. I raised the glass to my lips, met his eyes, and pretended to drink while mentally counting down the hours until justice arrived. 24 hours until Declan learned that the wife he'd tried to kill was the architect of his destruction. That evening, while Declan believed I was sleeping off another bad spell, I met Celeste and Agent Chen at a secure location, an FBI safe house in Bellevue, 20 minutes from our townhouse. The surveillance team had confirmed Declan was at a colleague's house for Monday Night Football, giving us a 3-hour window. Agent Chen spread the accumulated evidence across a conference table like a prosecutor laying out a murder case, because that's exactly what this was. Iris Kawamoto's findings were the final piece, she said, pointing to printouts of pharmaceutical requisition forms. Your husband has been ordering medication samples for 8 months, claiming they were for physician education seminars. But the seminars don't exist. The doctors listed as recipients are either retired or deceased. He's been stockpiling restricted pharmaceuticals and covering his tracks with fake distribution records. How did he get away with it? Celeste asked, her legal mind already building the prosecution strategy. Zenith Pharmaceuticals has loose internal controls. Sales reps have significant autonomy in distributing samples. The assumption is they're ethical professionals, not criminals using company resources to poison their spouses. Agent Chen pulled up another document. But we've now traced every medication found in Vivian's system back to specific requisition orders Declan filed. I stared at the forms bearing my husband's signature, each one a premeditated step toward my death. There were dozens of them, dating back 9 months. He'd been planning this even before my symptoms started, stockpiling his arsenal. The insurance fraud is equally damning, Agent Chen continued. We've confirmed that 17 of the specialists he billed for don't have you in their patient databases. The facilities where procedures were supposedly performed have no record of your visits. He's been creating an entirely fictional medical history to justify the claims. What about the life insurance policies? I asked. 3 policies, 3 different carriers, all opened in the last 14 months. Your signatures are forged. We've had forensic document analysts compare them to your actual signature. He was sophisticated about it, practicing on other documents first. We found draft attempts in his office safe. The safe I hadn't known existed, hidden behind a false panel the FBI discovered during their evidence collection. Celeste pulled out her own files. I've been building the attempted murder case. The toxicology evidence, Dr. Reese's medical opinion, the timeline of symptom progression correlating with his pharmaceutical requisitions. Combined with the financial motive, the policies, the embezzled insurance money, his family's bankruptcy, we have a clear picture of premeditated attempted murder for financial gain. There's something else, Agent Chen said, her expression darkening. We've been investigating whether there are other victims. Declan's been a pharmaceutical rep for 12 years. We're looking at other unexplained deaths among families of Zenith employees, spouses who died of mysterious illnesses, leaving behind substantial life insurance payouts. My blood ran cold. You think he's done this before? We're not sure, but 3 years ago, another Zenith rep's wife died of what was ruled natural causes, severe autoimmune disorder that developed rapidly. Her husband collected a $2 million life insurance payout. That husband was Declan's mentor in the company. They worked closely together for 5 years. Jesus, Celeste whispered. He learned this from someone else. This isn't his first rodeo. It's a pattern he inherited. Agent Chen nodded grimly. We're exhuming that body for toxicology testing. If we find evidence of similar poisoning, this case expands significantly. We might be looking at a conspiracy within Zenith Pharmaceuticals, multiple reps using their access to commit insurance fraud and murder. I thought of all the company events I'd attended with Declan, the other reps and their spouses. How many of those smiling couples were harboring similar secrets? How many wives had been slowly poisoned while their husbands networked over cocktails? Tomorrow morning, Agent Chen said, pulling me back to the present, we execute arrest warrants simultaneously. Declan at home, his mentor at his office, and potentially 2 other suspects we've identified. We'll seize all pharmaceutical records, financial documents, and digital evidence. By noon tomorrow, this entire operation will be exposed. I want to be there, I said firmly. When you arrest him, I want him to see my face. I want him to know that I'm not the victim he thought I was. Agent Chen hesitated. That's highly irregular. Arrest situations can be volatile. She has the right, Celeste interrupted. After what he's done, she deserves to watch his world end.
Fine, Agent Chen agreed. But you stay in the vehicle with me, behind protective cover. The tactical team goes in first. If there's any danger, any sign he might react violently, you get nowhere near him. Understood? I nodded. I understand. Then let's go over the timeline one more time. At 9:45 a.m., the tactical team positions around your townhouse. At 10 a.m. sharp, they move in. You need to be out of the house by 9:30, which means telling Declan you have an early appointment. With Dr. Reese, I finished, for pre-procedure blood work before the spinal tap. He'll believe that. He's been pushing for that procedure. Perfect. We'll have an unmarked car pick you up, bring you to the command post 2 blocks away. From there, you'll watch everything unfold. As Agent Chen detailed the operational plan, I felt a strange calm settle over me. 8 months of fear, manipulation, and systematic poisoning were about to end. Tomorrow, Declan would learn that the wife he'd underestimated, the one he'd reduced to a sick, compliant victim, had been gathering evidence against him all along. Tomorrow, the predator would become the prey, and I would be there to watch justice finally catch up with the man who'd vowed to love me until death do us part, never specifying whose death he had in mind. The morning of the arrest, I woke at 6 a.m. to find Declan already dressed, sitting on the edge of our bed with his tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be financial statements. "You're up early," I said, keeping my voice groggy. He startled slightly, closing the tablet. "Couldn't sleep. Big presentation today with the Carmichael account. You know how it is." I didn't know, because there was no Carmichael account. Agent Chen had verified that yesterday. It was another fiction, another excuse for his absences. Where he actually went during his supposed client meetings remained a mystery we'd unravel after the arrest. "I have my appointment with Dr. Reese at 9:30, I said, sitting up slowly. "Pre-procedure blood work for the spinal tap." His eyes lit up with poorly concealed satisfaction. "That's great, really great. I can drive you." "No need. Celeste offered to take me. She's in town for a case." The mention of my sister made his jaw tighten. "Celeste doesn't need to." "She wants to be supportive. It's sweet, really." I stood, moving toward the bathroom. "Besides, you have your presentation. I wouldn't want you to miss it."
I could feel his eyes on my back, calculating, assessing whether this deviation from routine posed any threat to his plans. But what choice did he have? Arguing too strenuously would reveal his need to control my movements. "Fine," he said finally, "but call me after. I want to know what the doctor says." "Of course." I showered and dressed with deliberate slowness, listening to Declan move through the house below, the clink of coffee mugs, the rustle of papers, the ordinary sounds of a morning routine that masked extraordinary evil. This was the last morning we would share this space. By tonight, he would be in federal custody, and I would begin the process of reclaiming my life from the ruins he'd made of it. At 9:15, Celeste's text arrived, outside. "My ride's here," I called down the stairs. Declan appeared in the foyer, his expression arranged in concern. He pulled me into an embrace that made my skin crawl. "Good luck with the blood work. I love you." "Love you too." I lied one final time. He kissed my forehead, his lips lingering a moment too long. "Tonight, let's celebrate the next step in your treatment. I'll pick up steaks from that butcher you like. We'll have a nice dinner, just the two of us." A last supper, I thought. He was planning to increase the dosage, push toward the final phase. The spinal tap would provide cover, complications from the procedure, a tragic turn in my mysterious illness. "That sounds perfect," I said, shouldering my purse where my phone was already recording. Every word, every gesture would be evidence. I walked to Celeste's car, feeling Declan's eyes on me from the doorway. My sister pulled away from the curb, and only when we turned the corner did I allow myself to breathe. "You okay?" Celeste asked. "I will be, in about 45 minutes." We drove to the command post, an unmarked FBI surveillance van parked near a construction site 2 blocks from our townhouse. Agent Chen was inside with her tactical team, monitoring multiple screens showing different angles of our house. "He's still in the kitchen," she said as I climbed into the van. "Looks like he's on his phone. We're running intercepts on his calls now." One screen showed Declan pacing, animated, clearly agitated about something. The audio feed crackled to life. "Don't care about the timeline," Declan was saying. "The procedure is scheduled. She'll have complications. It needs to look natural, like we discussed." Agent Chen's expression hardened. "He's talking to someone, trying to trace the number now." "Could be his mentor," Celeste suggested, "the one you're also arresting." "Or a doctor he's bribed," Agent Chen said. "Either way, he just handed us premeditation on a recorded line." I watched my husband through the screen, seeing him fully for what he was, not the man I'd married, but a calculating killer discussing the mechanics of my murder as casually as planning a dinner menu. "All units, this is command," Agent Chen spoke into her radio. "Target is mobile. Repeat, target is mobile and demonstrating consciousness of guilt. Move in now. Authorization code, Nightingale." On screen, Declan grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. He was running, I realized. Something had spooked him. Maybe my sister's presence, maybe his own paranoia, maybe divine intervention. "He's not getting away," Agent Chen said grimly, and the tactical team's vehicles roared to life around us. The trap had sprung early, but the predator was already caught. He just didn't know it yet. Declan's BMW jerked out of our driveway, tires squealing against pavement. Through the surveillance feed, I watched him check his rearview mirror repeatedly, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "All units, subject is eastbound on Mercer, box formation. Do not let him reach I-5. 3 unmarked vehicles converged from side streets, cutting off potential escape routes. Declan's car swerved, trying to find an opening in the sudden traffic that had materialized around him. "He knows," Celeste said, gripping my hand. "He knows we're coming." "Doesn't matter," Agent Chen replied coolly. "He's got nowhere to go." Unit 3, move to intercept. A black SUV pulled directly in front of Declan's BMW, forcing him to brake hard. His car stopped in the middle of Capitol Hill's commercial district, morning shoppers and dog walkers suddenly finding themselves in the middle of a federal takedown. "All units, execute arrest protocol, now." FBI agents emerged from vehicles with weapons drawn, their movements precise and coordinated. Through the screen, I watched Declan's face cycle through emotions: shock, rage, calculation. His hand moved toward his briefcase. "He's reaching for something," one agent shouted. "Hands visible, hands where we can see them." Declan's hands rose slowly, empty. The briefcase remained on the passenger seat, as agents approached from multiple angles. One yanked open the driver's door, while another secured his hands behind his back. "Declan Thorne, you're under arrest for healthcare fraud, wire fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud." I couldn't hear Declan's response through the surveillance feed, but I saw his mouth moving, saw him twisting to look around as if searching for help that wouldn't come. "Command, subject is secured," came the radio transmission. "Briefcase contains multiple pharmaceutical samples, syringes, and what appears to be falsified medical documents." "He was planning to run," Agent Chen said. "Probably had a fake identity waiting, offshore accounts prepared. These guys always have an escape plan." But I knew better. Declan wasn't running away. He was running to something. That phone call, the agitation, the sudden departure, he'd been coordinating with someone, preparing for the final phase of his plan. "The spinal tap," I said suddenly. "He mentioned the procedure is scheduled. Agent Chen, what if he's arranged for someone at the hospital to finish what he started?" Agent Chen grabbed her radio. "This is command. Send secondary team to Providence General immediately. We may have a compromised medical professional. I want Dr. Reese under protective detail and all of Vivian Thorne's scheduled procedures canceled and flagged." On screen, agents were loading Declan into an FBI vehicle. He turned his head, and for one moment, his eyes seemed to look directly at the camera, directly at me through the digital feed. The mask was completely gone now. What remained was cold fury and bitter calculation, the face of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. "Let's go," Agent Chen said, opening the van door. "He needs to see you. He needs to understand exactly who beat him." I stepped out into the morning sunlight, stronger than I'd been in 8 months. The poison was leaving my sister, but more importantly, the power dynamic had completely reversed. Declan Thorne had tried to reduce me to a victim, a statistic, a line item in his fraud scheme. Instead, I'd become the agent of his complete destruction. And now it was time for him to face the wife he'd tried to kill. The FBI vehicle carrying Declan was parked at the edge of the scene, giving agents space to process the arrest site. I approached with Agent Chen flanking me, Celeste close behind. Through the tinted windows, I could see Declan's silhouette, his head down, hands cuffed behind his back. Agent Chen opened the door. Declan's head snapped up, and when he saw me standing there, healthy, strong, very much alive, the color drained from his face. "Vivian," he breathed, "what are you? This is a mistake. Tell them it's a mistake." I stepped closer, letting him see me fully. The wife he'd been poisoning for 8 months, who should have been weak and dying, stood before him clear-eyed and steady. "The only mistake," I said quietly, "was yours. Thinking I was too sick to notice, too trusting to question, too grateful for your care to see what you were really doing. I don't know what they've told you, but I heard the nurses, Declan, at the hospital. They were talking about the insurance fraud, the shadow accounts, the man poisoning his wife while billing her insurance for hundreds of thousands in fake procedures." His jaw clenched. The mask tried to reassemble itself, the concerned husband, the falsely accused, but it no longer fit. "You're confused. The medications, they can cause paranoia." "The medications you were giving me?" I pulled out my phone, displaying the lab results. "The benzodiazepines, antihistamines, experimental neurological compounds, all traced back to your requisition orders at Zenith Pharmaceuticals. We have every form you filed, every fake distribution record, every forged signature." Agent Chen stepped forward. "We also have the life insurance policies you opened in her name, $3.5 million you'd collect when she died from complications of her mysterious illness, and the $416,000 you embezzled from her actual insurance claims, funneled into accounts she didn't know existed." "That money was for her treatment." "The treatments that never happened?" Celeste interjected. The specialists who never saw her? The procedures performed at facilities with no record of her visits? We've documented 17 instances of healthcare fraud, Declan. 17. His expression shifted then, the concerned husband facade cracking to reveal something colder underneath. "You think you're so clever," he said, his voice low and venomous, "playing detective while I was trying to help you. Do you have any idea what your medical bills were costing us? What your condition was doing to our future?" "My condition that you created," I said. "You poisoned me, Declan, systematically, deliberately, for 8 months, and then you made me feel guilty for being sick. I gave you everything," his voice rose sharply, "a home, stability, care when you were too weak to function, and this is how you repay me? By believing conspiracy theories and turning the FBI against me?" The audacity of his self-righteousness was staggering. Even caught, even facing overwhelming evidence, he was trying to cast himself as the victim. "You gave me poison," I said. "You gave me fake love and real toxins. You gave me 8 months of hell while you calculated how much my death was worth." Agent Chen's radio crackled. "Command, we've apprehended the secondary suspect at Providence General, Dr. Marcus Henley, anesthesiologist, found with forged procedure orders and a pre-filled syringe containing potassium chloride." My blood ran cold. Potassium chloride, the drug used in lethal injections. That was Declan's endgame for the spinal tap. A medical accident that would stop my heart. "You were going to kill me during the procedure," I whispered. "Make it look like a complication." Declan's silence was answer enough. "Take him," Agent Chen ordered the officers. "Federal detention, maximum security. And get that doctor in custody to start talking. I want to know how deep this conspiracy goes." As they prepared to close the vehicle door, Declan looked at me one final time. "You'll never prove intent. It'll be my word against circumstantial evidence. I'll be out in 5 years, maybe less." I smiled then, cold and certain. "I recorded everything, Declan. Every meal you prepared, every pill you gave me, every time you pushed for unnecessary procedures. The FBI has 8 months of documentation. And that phone call you made this morning, the one where you discussed making my complications look natural, that's premeditated murder on tape." The reality of his situation finally hit him. His face went slack, then contorted with rage. "You bitch!" The door slammed shut, cutting off his words. I watched the vehicle pull away, carrying my would-be murderer to federal prison, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Justice wasn't just coming for Declan Thorne. It had already arrived. The news broke within hours. Pharmaceutical rep arrested in elaborate murder-for-hire insurance scheme dominated local headlines, quickly picked up by national networks. By evening, Declan's face was plastered across every news outlet, alongside mine, the wife who'd survived and exposed him. Agent Chen held a press conference at the federal building, laying out the scope of the investigation. Dr. Marcus Henley, the anesthesiologist, had confessed within 2 hours of arrest, revealing a network of corrupt medical professionals who'd been facilitating similar schemes for years. 3 other Zenith Pharmaceutical reps were arrested by nightfall, all following the same playbook Declan had used. This appears to be a sophisticated criminal enterprise operating within the pharmaceutical and medical industries, Agent Chen announced to assembled reporters. "We've identified at least 7 victims over the past 5 years, with potential fraud totaling over $3 million. 2 spouses are deceased under circumstances we're now re-examining. Mrs. Thorne's courage in coming forward has likely prevented additional deaths and exposed systematic corruption in healthcare billing." I watched from Agent Chen's office, Celeste beside me. My phone had been ringing nonstop. Reporters, colleagues from Nexus, former friends who'd disappeared during my illness. I'd ignored them all except for one call. Iris Kawamoto had cried when I told her everything. I knew something was wrong with those billing codes, she'd said, but I never imagined. "God, Viv, I'm so sorry." "You helped save my life," I'd told her. "Your investigation gave us the evidence we needed." By the second day, the full scope of Zenith Pharmaceuticals' complicity emerged. The company had failed to implement basic oversight of sample distribution, allowing reps like Declan to requisition controlled substances with minimal documentation. Their CEO resigned. Their stock price plummeted. Congressional hearings were announced. Declan's family remained silent, their lawyers advising no comment. But I'd seen his mother on the courthouse steps, her face aged a decade, the weight of her son's crimes etched in every line. Old Seattle money couldn't buy innocence when the evidence was this overwhelming. The toxicology report on Declan's mentor's deceased wife came back positive for the same pharmaceutical cocktail found in my system. Her death, ruled natural causes 3 years ago, was reclassified as homicide. Her widower, now facing murder charges, had collected $2 million in insurance and immediately paid off debts on his family's failing business. The pattern was clear. Zenith reps targeting their own spouses when financial pressures mounted, using their pharmaceutical access as murder weapons while exploiting insurance loopholes for profit. 17 counts of healthcare fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder in the first degree, and forgery, Celeste read from the formal charges. The prosecution is pushing for 40 years without parole. He'll die in prison, Viv. 40 years. It should have felt like victory, but mostly I felt hollow. 8 months of my life had been stolen, my body violated, my trust shattered. No prison sentence could restore what Declan had taken. The civil suits will be massive, Celeste continued. Zenith Pharmaceuticals, the insurance companies that missed the fraud, even the medical facilities that allowed unauthorized procedures. You're looking at settlements in the tens of millions. Money I never wanted, earned through suffering I never deserved. What matters is he can't hurt anyone else, I said quietly. None of them can't. Agent Chen entered with updated news. Dr. Henley's testimony just revealed 2 more doctors in the conspiracy. This thing goes deeper than we thought. Vivian, your case broke open something much bigger than one man's greed. The wife Declan had tried to kill had instead exposed an entire criminal network, possibly saving countless future victims. There was grim satisfaction in that. But as I sat in that federal office, surrounded by evidence of systematic evil disguised as healthcare, I felt the weight of what came next. Rebuilding a life from the ashes of betrayal, learning to trust again, finding purpose beyond survival. The aftermath of Declan's arrest was just beginning. The real work, healing, recovery, transformation, still lay ahead. 3 weeks after Declan's arrest, an envelope arrived at Celeste's office, where I'd been staying. The return address showed a women's correctional facility in Oregon, not where Declan was held, but somewhere I didn't recognize. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting. Dear Mrs. Thorne, my name is Patricia Henley. I am Dr. Marcus Henley's wife, or rather, I was. I've filed for divorce since his arrest. I'm writing because I need you to know that I had no idea what my husband was doing. For 3 years, I believed he was a dedicated doctor, working long hours to help patients. I never suspected he was helping pharmaceutical reps murder their spouses for insurance money. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because 5 years ago, my best friend died of what we were told was an autoimmune disorder. Her husband was a Zenith rep. After your case broke, I started asking questions, looking at old medical records her family kept. The symptoms match yours exactly. Her name was Rebecca Matsuda. She was 31 when she died. Her husband collected $2.3 million in life insurance and remarried within 6 months. I've given all the information to the FBI. They're exhuming her body. If the toxicology shows what I think it will, you saved me from spending the rest of my life not knowing that my friend was murdered, that her death wasn't some cruel twist of fate, but a calculated crime. I know this doesn't undo what you've been through, but I wanted you to know that your courage to fight back, to expose this conspiracy, it's given other families answers. It's given us closure, and it's probably saved lives. I'm testifying against my husband. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison, and I'll spend the rest of mine knowing I shared a bed with a man capable of such evil. We're both victims of the men we trusted, though your suffering was far worse than mine. I'm donating Marcus's pension, $127,000, to establish a foundation for victims of medical fraud. It's the least I can do. The fund will be called the Vivian Thorne Patient Advocacy Foundation, if you'll allow it, to help other people who are vulnerable in medical systems recognize when they're being exploited. Thank you for being stronger than they expected. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to just let go. With profound respect and sorrow, Patricia Henley. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of something more complex. Grief for Rebecca Matsuda and others like her who hadn't survived. Relief that my fight had meaning beyond my own survival. And unexpected connection with another woman whose life had been shattered by medical betrayal. She wants to name a foundation after you, Celeste said softly, reading over my shoulder. Rebecca Matsuda should be remembered too, I said. All of them should. Every victim of this conspiracy. I drafted a response that evening, accepting Patricia's proposal, but suggesting a different name. The Survivors Shield Foundation, for those who lived and those who didn't, for the families left behind and the patients still vulnerable. Within weeks, Patricia and I had become unlikely allies, 2 women transformed by betrayal into advocates for systemic change. Her medical expertise and my technology background created a powerful combination for building patient protection protocols. The foundation became my purpose, transforming 8 months of victimhood into a mission that could protect thousands of others from similar predators lurking in hospital corridors and pharmaceutical companies. Declan had tried to reduce me to a statistic, a closed case file, a death certificate. Instead, I'd become a catalyst for change, turning personal trauma into public protection. And somehow, from the ashes of attempted murder, something meaningful was being born. 1 year later, I stood in the lobby of Providence General Hospital, where everything had changed. The space had been renamed, the Vivian Thorne Center for Patient Safety and Advocacy, funded by settlements from Zenith Pharmaceuticals and a dozen complicit insurance companies. The center offered free financial review services for patients facing serious illness, legal assistance with medical power of attorney, and education programs training healthcare workers to recognize signs of medical fraud and abuse. In 12 months, we'd reviewed over 300 cases, identifying and stopping 17 instances of exploitation before they could escalate. Dr. Reese stood beside me at the dedication ceremony, along with Patricia Henley, Iris Kawamoto, and Agent Chen. Survivors, all of us, transformed by different forms of betrayal into a network of protection for others. The first-year statistics are remarkable, Dr. Reese said, reviewing our impact report. 300 families protected, 17 active fraud cases stopped, 2 pharmaceutical companies forced to implement new oversight protocols, and 8 other survivors came forward about similar schemes, leading to additional arrests. Declan's trial had lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before convicting him on all counts. 42 years in federal prison. He would be 74 when released, if he survived that long. His co-conspirators received similar sentences. The Zenith Pharmaceuticals network was dismantled completely. I'd moved from Seattle to Portland, closer to Celeste, starting fresh in a city where Declan's shadow couldn't reach. I'd returned to Nexus Innovation as VP of Security Engineering, the position I'd been promoted to before the poisoning began. The acquisition had gone through, and my stock options had vested. The money funded the foundation's expansion to 3 more cities. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was standing in this hospital, in the very place where I'd overheard nurses discussing my husband's betrayal, and knowing that conversation had sparked a movement, that other patients would never feel as helpless, as violated, as systematically destroyed as I had been. Declan had tried to kill me for money. Instead, I'd built something that would outlive us both, a shield for the vulnerable, a system that protected instead of preyed upon the sick. He'd left me stranded at a hospital, thinking I was too weak to fight back. I'd proven him catastrophically wrong. And every patient who walked through these doors, every family we protected, every fraud we stopped, they were living proof that sometimes the intended victim becomes the hero of someone else's story. Justice had been served, but more importantly, purpose had been found, and I was finally completely free.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.